When I look at the world today, I don't just see borders drawn on a map. I see borders drawn by fear, by ambition, and by the stories we choose to believe. The Donbass conflict, it wasn't just a war between two armies. It was a mirror held up to humanity, showing us what happens when pride speaks louder than purpose, and when the race for control blinds us to the real cost of chaos. People often ask me, Jack, what do you see when you look at these events? And I tell them, I see lessons. Because every crisis, no matter how violent or political, hides a pattern that reveals how power really works in the modern age. In the past, wars were fought with swords and guns. Today, wars are fought with information. In Donbass, the world didn't just see tanks and soldiers, it saw headlines, tweets, leaks, and truths twisted into weapons. Each side believed their story was right, but the harder they fought to prove it, the faster truth slipped away. Power today doesn't belong to those who control territory. It belongs to those who control the narrative, who shapes what people believe, who decides what victory means and what defeat truly is. In that answer lies the real strength of a nation. Every leader begins with strategy, a plan, a vision. But when fear enters the room, strategy quietly leaves. In Donbass, fear moved faster than any army. The fear of losing power, of looking weak, of being forgotten by history. And fear makes nations do strange things. They spend more on weapons than on wisdom. They build walls instead of bridges. They silence the very voices that could have saved them. But it's not just nations. As entrepreneurs, as dreamers, we do the same. We let fear guide our decisions. We defend our failures instead of learning from them. And when fear becomes policy, whether in business or in war, collapse is only a matter of time. For decades, the world believed that control equals stability. But Donbass showed us something different. The harder one side tried to control, the more unstable everything became. It's the same in life. When we try to control every variable, every outcome, we suffocate possibility. Control isn't strength. Adaptability is. The world of tomorrow will not be led by those who dominate, but by those who can adapt fast, calm, and with empathy. Because when the storm comes, the rigid tree breaks, but the bamboo bends and survives. You cannot separate war from economy. Every missile launched isn't just a weapon, it's a budget line. Every day of conflict burns not only fuel, but futures. Imagine if those same billions were invested in innovation, in education, in green energy, in rebuilding hope instead of destroying it. We talk about GDP and growth, but what we really measure is how we spend our fear. In Donbass, factories fell silent, families fled, currencies trembled, but quietly, new industries emerged to rebuild. New minds learned to survive, and new leaders began asking, what if we used our power differently? That's the hidden side of every crisis. It gives birth to reformers. History's darkest nights often create its brightest mornings, propaganda. It's the easiest weapon to use and the hardest to defend against. It tells people what to think, not how to think. And that's dangerous, because once thinking becomes outsourced, freedom becomes an illusion. During the Donbass conflict, people around the world watched different realities on different screens. Some saw heroes, some saw villains, but few saw the human beings caught in between. Families, children, dreamers, all living two versions of the same story. Perspective, not propaganda, is what makes us human. The ability to see another side, even when it hurts your pride, is what separates leaders from followers and thinkers from believers. The real question is not whose truth is right, but can we listen long enough to find the truth that unites? Every empire falls the same way, not because it ran out of soldiers, but because it ran out of meaning. The greatest threat to power is not rebellion, it's irrelevance. When leaders forget why they lead, when nations forget who they serve, the system begins to collapse from within. Donbass reminded the world that power without purpose becomes poison. It isolates, it blinds, and eventually it consumes itself. That's why the most powerful person in the room is rarely the loudest. True strength whispers, it's patient, it builds quietly while others destroy loudly. We've entered a new era where a 20-year-old with a smartphone can challenge a government's narrative, where a single post can move markets, and where trust has become the new currency. In Donbass, drones replaced generals, algorithms replaced analysts. Influence replaced invasion. This is the world our children will inherit, a world where data is stronger than dynamite and where those who understand psychology will lead those who only understand politics. For entrepreneurs, this means one thing: don't fight the old power, build the new one. Influence is no longer about hierarchy. It's about connection. And those who learn to connect with authenticity will always win. Every conflict, no matter how justified it sounds, tests the limits of our humanity. In Donbass, homes turned to dust, but what truly broke were hearts. A mother doesn't care who wins a border. She cares who comes home. And yet, history rarely writes her name. At what point does victory stop being victory? When does defending become destroying? Humanity's breaking point isn't the first missile. It's the first lie we tell ourselves to justify it. When we say we have no choice, we give up the very thing that makes us human, the ability to choose differently. The lesson of Donbass isn't about geography, it's about mindset. It reminds us that the next great revolutions won't start with armies, they'll start with awareness. The leaders of the future won't command troops, they'll command trust. They won't fight over land, they'll compete for talent, innovation, and ideas. Technology is rewriting power. And the nations that invest in curiosity instead of conflict will define the next century. That's the future I believe in. A future where power is measured not by how much we can destroy, but by how much we can rebuild. Some historians will mark Donbass as a tragedy. Others will mark it as a transition. But I see it as a turning point, a moment when humanity had to decide what kind of civilization it wanted to be. Every generation faces a test. For our grandparents, it was survival. For our parents, it was progress. For us, it is wisdom. Can we be wise enough to end cycles that no longer serve us? Can we lead with empathy instead of ego? Can we finally understand that the opposite of war isn't peace, it's creation? Because only when we create ideas, connections, solutions, do we truly evolve beyond destruction. If you're leading a company, a team, or even just yourself, remember this. You will face your own Donbass, moments of chaos where everything you've built feels under attack, moments when truth is unclear and hope feels far away. When that happens, don't look for enemies, look for clarity. Because clarity, not control, wins in the long run. Ask yourself, am I reacting from fear or responding from purpose? If it's fear, pause. If it's purpose, proceed. Leadership today isn't about commanding others. It's about understanding energy. Where attention flows, energy grows. And the leaders who direct that energy toward creation, not destruction, will define the next century. When the noise of war fades, what remains is a quiet truth. Every nation, every business, every human being is fighting the same invisible battle, the battle between ego and evolution. Ego wants to be right. Evolution wants to learn. Ego wants to control. Evolution wants to grow. And evolution always wins, even if it takes centuries. Donbass isn't the end of a story. It's a reminder that humanity is still writing its draft, and the pen is in our hands. When I speak to young entrepreneurs, I tell them this story. Not to talk about war, but to remind them that the greatest revolutions begin inside the human mind. If you can stay calm when the world is loud, if you can seek wisdom when others seek revenge, if you can build when others break, then you are already stronger than any army. Because the future will not belong to those who conquer, but to those who create, connect, and care. And maybe one day, history will look back at Donbass not as a symbol of division, but as the moment humanity finally remembered who we are. True power is not about being feared, it's about being followed willingly. And when that day comes, we'll realize that the greatest victory humanity can achieve is peace born from understanding. If this story made you think, not about politics, but about people, share it, because awareness is the first step toward wisdom. And the wars of tomorrow won't be fought on battlefields, but in the hearts and minds of those brave enough to imagine a better way. You've listened this far, that means you care. So don't stop now. Like this video if you believe wisdom should travel further than war. Share it, because real change begins with one conversation, and subscribe so that together we can keep asking the questions that the world avoids. Be part of the voice that refuses to stay silent.